Welcome back to Crenshaw Storytime. We are doing the Chronicles of Ori, Book 7, Chapter 31, Oya. And we'll be doing Book 8, Chapter 35, The White Line. Chapter 31, Oya. Fear is the memory of pain. Addiction is the memory of pleasure. Freedom is beyond both. African proverb. Oya was an entity of ceaseless motion, summoned from the cosmic fusion of Orirun's fiery brilliance and Olukun's deep waters. She was a balancing act equalizing their divine ashe and ensuring they would never clash. Her partner was the volatile Jakuta, whose temper lit up the skies when their arguments erupted. Their union was a spectacle of power and passion. And on Nile's infancy, the planet was a raw canvas of dust, clay, vast sand dunes, towering mountains, sprawling ice sheets, and endless oceans. It was into this untamed world that Oya, with her wild spirit, made her dramatic entrance, captivating Ogun from the very moment of her arrival. Yet her ashe remained elusive, tantalizing, yet beyond his reach, until the moment Jakuta and Oya had a thunderous fight that ended their spectacular union. United, Ogun and Oya became the architects of life, scattering seeds across the nascent landscapes. Their combined ashe sparked a transformation, rousing Mama Onile from her slumber, awakening her to her own immense potential and powerful ashe. Ogun found himself drawn to Oya, believing his feelings to be love. They shared countless moments together, nurturing the land and watching it flourish under their care. However, their bond was perpetually disrupted by Jakarta's interventions, driven by jealousy and a desire to control Oya. His now former partner in nurturing life from the skies, Jakarta stirred the lands into chaos. His bolts of ashe hurled in fits of rage, scarred the seeds of life. He was a spirit of unrest. The Orishas, weary of Jakarta's unpredictable nature, chose to keep their distance, recognizing the futility of trying to quell his rage. Ogun was known for his fiery spirit, and the Council of Orishas conceived a plan to temper it. They proposed that Oya, the focus of Ogun's long-standing affection, become his consort. I felt like I heard a fly, sorry. Ogun found in Oya a reflection of his own transformative ashe, an Orisha embodying strength and the capacity to create change. Yet, Oya had a side unknown to Ogun. She was, in fact, capable of the gentlest caress, the softest lullabies, and the sweetest kisses. She could soothe the most troubled heart. Ogun was unacquainted with such tenderness. His ashe thrived on the boiling of blood in the heat of disputes and the clamor of battles. He saw himself as a warrior and deemed gentleness to be weakness. Oya and Ogun's union was designed to bring tranquility to the Aye, and for a time their love achieved just that. Conflict subsided and destructive forces were tamed. Yet Oya found Ogun's Iron Kingdom to be no more than an iron cage. There was no dance in iron, no freedom for the wind to swirl. Oya was increasingly aloof, staying more often beyond the kingdom's imposing walls. Her absences, which would stretch for days, did not go unnoticed by Ogun. Within him was a simmering aggression, and he commanded her not to leave. Oya's spirit chafed against the order, yet Ogun was too strong to defy. However, Oya was not without allies. The seeds of life that had blossomed on earth revered her. Without her, they would not exist. She spotted a buffalo, roaming free and grazing the lush land. A wave of envy surged through her, brought on by the creature's untamed spirit. Tears fell from her eyes and seeped into the soil, a heartfelt call to a call. Hearing Oya's silent plea, the Orisha of the soil instructed the buffalo to offer itself in an act of pure devotion. The creature compiled, surrendering its life under Oya's hand. She donned the buffalo skin, and a transformation took place. Merged with the hide, Oya became the buffalo and experienced its inherent freedom. Cloaked in disguise, she could evade Ogun's gaze, escaping into the night whenever she pleased. Her newfound liberation was aided by the fact of Ogun's distraction as he pursued other women. Yet Ogun was not easily beguiled. When he was focused, one fateful day, he shadowed Oya, observing her as she unearthed the buffalo skin from its rock-strewn hiding place and slipped into it. Ogun, witnessing this disobedience, felt a surge of anger. He found solace in control. And knowing each piece of his kingdom was exactly where he desired it to be. The sight of Oya's freedom disrupted the delicate balance, causing his fury to ignite like a blacksmith's forge. Driven by rage, he seized the buffalo skin, placing it beyond her reach. He forbade her from ever wearing it again, hoping that, being stripped of her disguise, she would be forced to show him the love he so desired. A love that acknowledged his power and authority. Yet his actions and threats were akin to trying to restrict the wind, a futile endeavor that only stoked the embers of rebellion within Oya's heart. For a time, Oya had resigned herself to her fate as Ogun's consort, finding within her heart an enduring fondness for him. Yet a piece of her heart remained unyielding, reserved exclusively for Shango. Together they danced across the skies, her intense passion for him ever growing as their ashes mingled in the clouds. But Shango's attention was ever fleeting. He revealed in his carnal exploits with mortals and Orishas alike. Still, Oya's longing remained steady, a spark awaiting a breeze to fan it back into a blaze. Thus, when Shango unexpectedly touched her hand in the council hall and whispered that they should meet, she was taken aback. The harder she tried to forget him, the more he occupied her thoughts. She yearned to see him, but knew it would not be easy. Oya would require a distraction, potent enough to divert Ogun's attention so that she could slip away. She knew that Ogun, a master blacksmith, was fascinated by rare metals and their properties. She recalled his particular interest in sky iron, a metal that fell from the skies and was believed to imbue any weapon created from it with unmatched power. When anointing humans as kings, he gave them weapons wrought from sky iron. Oya crafted her plan. She started rumors of a sky iron shower that would be visible from the highest peak of the Iron Kingdom, Ogun bit. The prospect of obtaining such a rare metal was too enticing for him to ignore. As twilight descended, Ogun, armed with his machete and an insatiable thirst for forging weapons and machines, embarked on his journey toward the land's highest summit, leaving Oya alone. She sought out Shagun. She soon enveloped in his arms. She was intoxicated by his presence, losing herself in a whirlwind of passion. She was so distracted that she didn't see the small iron creature that lurked in the shadows, observing the secret rendezvous and reporting back to its master. Ogun was on the highest mountaintop when he received the news of Oya's betrayal. He stormed back to his palace, his fury thundering through the silent night. Caught in the act, Oya looked to Shango, but noticed something peculiar. There was no shock on his face. No surprise at Ogun's sudden appearance. Instead, he wore a smirk, displaying a grim satisfaction that sent chills through Oya. It struck her like a bolt of his lightning. It had all been planned. Ogun lunged at Oya, attempting to seize her arm, but she pulled away. For the first time, she felt a wave of revulsion, not only for Ogun, but for Shango, who had used her as a pawn in his game to destabilize Ogun. Ogun, seething with anger, threatened Shango with vengeance, promising him a battle devoid of mercy. Oya, for her part, cursed both of them and vowed to never again be imprisoned by her desire for Shango or bound by her marital ties to Ogun. After declaring her intentions, Oya experienced a release, a purging of her emotions. She achieved a new clarity. She was no longer a captive of lust or a prisoner of marriage. She was truly free. Interesting. I like this picture, but hold on. I have to. So sorry. I gotta make sure it's covered, but it's a beautiful, beautiful picture. And underneath my hand is the buffalo. And there were doves. No, they're not doves. They're regular birds. Wow. Book 8, Chapter 35, The White Line. A spider's cobweb is not only its sleeping spring, but also its food trap. African proverb. Mama O'Neill found herself stricken as Orirun was overrun by the wrinkles, who had descended like a swarm of locusts. They consumed everything in sight, stripping her bare, mining her very ashe until she bled dust, and leaving her lands barren and desolate. For a time, Mama O'Neill languished in her affliction. Days turned to nights, and the moon waxed and waned as she endured the agony of labor. At the climax of her pain, she purged herself, bringing forth Babiluai. Born from his mother's suffering, he was unlike any Orisha Eden had ever beheld. His skin was marred by sores, and each blemish oozed with anguish. He was a stark contrast to the radiant beauty of the other Orishas. There was no symmetry in his form, no grace in his movements. The other Orishas recoiled at the very sight of him. They maintained their distance, speaking quietly among themselves, their eyes filled with a mix of pity and disdain. Babiluai, despite being an Orisha himself, was treated as an outcast, shunned and isolated by Eden. His growth was rapid, and with it came a strange illness that plagued Orirun. What began as a single affliction soon multiplied, each infected mortal reflecting the visage of Babiluai. This illness was unlike any known before, deadly, relentless, and impervious to all remedies known to the Orishas. Ayaba Eve, desperate to save her people, summoned the council of Orishas, seeking their guidance as the plague claimed more lives. The already fragile hope of Eden's people all but disappeared. Eve recognized that Babiluai did not understand the effect he was having on the realms of Orishas and humans. "We must not banish him without just cause," she implored passionately, "for if he has indeed ushered in this plague, he knows not what he does." However, the majority of the council, driven by the urgent need to save Orirun's people, decided otherwise. Bereft of evidence to absolve him, Eve acquiesced to their verdict. Babalu Ayi was exiled from Eden, cast out into the shadows of the fig trees, in the hope that this might bring relief to the suffering kingdom. Although Babalu Ayi had been exiled, the toll from the disease only continued to increase. Every attempted cure had failed, and Private Shango confided in Eve. "I pondered deeply. If Babalu Ayi brought this illness that knows no remedy, then perhaps he himself holds the key." Eve felt a wave of relief wash over her as Shango voiced what she herself had begun to suspect. However, the council will never permit his return without some sort of proof, and the proof lies in the garden. However, the council will never permit his return without some sort of proof, and the proof lies in the garden, she replied. Eve was forbidden to venture beyond the walls of Eden, for Enrankos prowled the garden, preying upon mortals. Yet Eve was persistent, and seeing her determination, Shango said he will protect her, and they sought Babalu Ayi together. Embarking on their journey, Shango and Eve immediately realized that the soil was no longer fertile, and the plants were riddled with parasites feeding off their leaves. With caution, they steered clear of the strangler figs. When they encountered a dark, imposing shadow, Shango sensed Babalu Ayi was near. Shango instructed Eve to remain in the light as he stepped in the shadows to approach the banished Orisha. Promising to return quickly with his fire breath, Shango ignited a thick branch to illuminate his path. Within the shadows, he found Babalu Ayi, who had been transformed from the meek Orisha that was shown no love. In the darkness among the Ojogun, Babalu Ayi had discovered his true home, and the one being who cared for him was Iku, the Lady of Death. Babalu Ayi had learned to heal the disease that he had brought with him into the world by embracing the shadows within himself. He now spent his time healing the sick and returning the dead back to the soil. He had no desire to return to Eden, preferring to tend to his purpose in the garden. As Eve stood amid the death and decay of the garden, awaiting Shango's return, a majestic white lion appeared. Its coat was so pure that it cast a haloed glow, a soft luminance that seemed out of place against the desolation. Eve was mesmerized by the splendid creature. She found herself inexorably drawn toward it. Her curiosity was piqued, and she was oblivious to the hidden menace that lurked beneath the lion's enchanting beauty. It lowered its massive body in an elegant bow, an invitation for her to mount its back. Eve's breath grew shallow, her pulse quickening as her curiosity overcame her caution. She stepped closer. The beauty of the beast stripped her of reason and replaced it with wonder. Her fingers brushed to the creature's fur as she climbed upon its back. She barely had the time to settle before her world shattered. The lion sprang forward, a sudden blur of motion. Grass and roots buckled beneath its charge, and Eve had no choice but to cling tightly. The garden dissolved into a stream of shapes and colors. It was only then that Shango emerged. A storm heralded his approach. Dark clouds churned above the garden, an angry sky split by bolts of lightning. Shango's voice thundered across Eden, his anguish twisting her name into a roar. "Eve!" He bellowed. He sprinted through the broken bush, his axe in hand, his ashe surging with fury, and yet despite his power, he could not catch her. The other Orishas, appeared by his side, summoned by the threatening sky and Shango's call, which had carried to every corner of Eden. Eve was gone. Wow. Hold on. Okay, cool. I want this blank. I'm gonna try to buy this one. I like this. I like that one. And real quick, for this story of the White Lion and how Babulayi is banished, the Lion King 2 Simba's Pride is what it reminded me of, as well as there's an episode of Teen Titans, the original Teen Titans, and it's the later season, I think the last season. I don't know what the guy's power was, but Starfire was the only person to be real kind to him and show him grace and mercy. He was banished from his home too, because the government did an experiment on him. But now he returned, he returned with the Titans, and unfortunately, he had to leave Earth. And I don't know if he became a star or what, but Starfire said basically goodbye to him. So that's what Babulu Ayi reminds me of. Zuko, even from Avatar The Last Airbender, when he fell banished from the Fire Nation. And I'm trying to think of another movie, an actual movie. I want to say because it was the image, but before I get back to the story, and we're in the White Line of Book 8, Chapter 35. There's another movie, I'm thinking of it. I don't want to say The Freedom Riders, even though people were judged in that movie as well. It's another movie, I can't think of it right now, but it comes to my head where somebody was banished. They felt like they weren't accepted by their people. Go on somewhere, fly. Shoot, I knew that fly was somewhere in there. Let's go come back to me. And as for the previous chapter we read of Oya, many shows and movies have shown that circumstance. I can't even think of them right now off the top of my head, but they go come soon. Ooh. And what an enhanced like love story from how I took it in. I enjoyed that. I can't really think of the movies or shows. But shall we continue? They go come. They go come. Somebody driving fast out there. And we're all there. Wow. Well, I gave y'all a double feature. Tomorrow we'll have the final goodbye. Wow. All right. I hope y'all enjoyed. Let me save it. We'll be reading next. Book 9. I believe so, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Book 9. Chapter 37. Migration of Gods. And then, Book 10. The Children of Ori. The War of the Gods. Y'all have a beautiful night.